Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to our Build Your Career webinar series. My name is Michelle Fawn. I manage our education and professional certification products and services here at the IEEE Computer Society. Each month, we host webinars on vital business skills that will help you excel throughout your career. Topics covered include, but not limited to, communication and presentation skills, interviewing tips, personal branding, effective writing, tips to improve your outside-the-box thinking, and more. Before we get started, I would like to address some housekeeping tasks. The recording of this webinar has started. You can ask any questions in the Q&A panel. Our speaker, Kathy, will answer as many questions as she can following her presentation. In a few days, you will receive an email with instructions to access both the presentation slides along with the recordings on demand. Today's webinar is on the Fantastic Five, the 5 soft skills every technical professional should develop. Our speaker will be providing advice to individuals working in a tech field so that they might differentiate themselves from the field of candidates when applying for jobs, but also enable them to outperform early in their careers. Soft skills are in high demands, even in the most technical of fields. In today's webinar, a hiring manager will provide practical advice on how to help you translate your technical expertise into terms non-technical people can understand. Joining us today is Ms. Kathy Land, IEEE President-Elect and IEEE Fellow. She has more than 30 years of industry experience in the application of software engineering methodologies, management of information systems, and leaderships of a software development team. She is an author or co-author of a number of texts, paper, webinars, all supporting sound engineering principles and practical applications of software process methodologies. Kathy, thank you for presenting today. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be able to talk to everyone today about something that is extremely important to every individual who chooses technology as a career field. However, in computer science and engineering, the importance of this is something that's not often talked about. So today you'll be hearing about something I call the Fantastic Five. It's the 5 soft skills that I feel are critical for every technical professional. And what I hope to do today is to provide you with 5 soft skill target areas for you to work on so that you can increase your professional confidence and your value to your company, and as a byproduct, increase your technical skills. Okay, so what exactly are soft skills? So to begin with, soft skills are those things that are intrinsic to who you are. So they're hard to improve, and they're uncomfortable to practice. But like any skill, practice makes perfect. And like any muscle, the more you exercise it, the stronger it becomes. And like any muscle, it's painful at first, you get sore. So as the saying goes, no pain, no gain. And what's important to remember with these skills is that they're portable across all industries. It doesn't matter if you're an educator or an automobile mechanic or an engineer. If you're a good communicator, this translates. So I'll describe the difference briefly between hard and soft skills. And I already mentioned that soft skills are transferable across industries, and that would imply that hard skills are industry-specific. And so that's the case. Additionally, people tend to start with a set of natural abilities. For example, they might be naturally outgoing. Another difference is that hard skills are based on the acquisition of technical knowledge, where soft skills are related more to emotional intelligence, or what we can say is IQ versus EQ. You can see in the examples of how soft and hard skills are described. For soft skills, a person might be described as detail-oriented or as working well under tight deadlines. And for hard skills, they might be skilled in various specific programming languages or possess a specific bachelor's degree. So you'll hear me foot stomp on how important soft skills are throughout this talk, and it's the focus of the talk, either in my words or in the words of others. And so I'll take this opportunity to echo the sentiments of the CEO of LinkedIn when I say I have many technical people who work for me who can solve complex problems, but only a few who are equipped with the skills required to run teams, negotiate contracts, or to present to customers. So why should you care? So soft skills immediately take people out of their comfort zone, and in school we're measured on our hard skills. It's easy, in school we study, we pass the test, and the soft skills, as I said before, are hard. But you should care and want to work on these soft skills just as much as you did to make that A on that test in thermodynamics. And here's why. Employers seek out individuals and want to keep and promote individuals who can complement their hard skills with a complement of softer skills. This recent data I found is pretty striking, and it reflects that 72% of CEOs believe that soft skills are more important to the success of their business than hard skills. And 94% of recruiters believe that soft skills outweigh experience. And 94% of recruiting professionals believe an employee with stronger soft skills has a better chance of being promoted to a leadership position than an employee with more years of experience but with weaker soft skills. So the bottom line is that the qualifier in every report and study that I found, and from my own experience as a manager, and the reason I chose this topic, is that soft skills are what separate the good from the great. So I just described why you should care about this topic, but why do I care? So I've been responsible for delivering software and systems products for years. And as a hiring manager for the teams that I build and to deliver these items, it's critical that the team members possess both hard and soft skills if we're going to deliver the desired capabilities I'm responsible for. So I found out pretty quickly, early in my career, that I could hire the most talented programmer or engineer, but if this person could not communicate technically in the simplest terms with a customer, or with other members of the team, then they were lacking a critical skill that was required for requirements development and design, something essential to successful product delivery and development. So my arrival at what I'm calling the Fantastic Five, how did I end up with my list? Well, I did some research, and there are generally lists of recommendations, anywhere from 3 to 15 items. And I wanted to give you a list that was easy to remember. Lists of more than 5 items are hard to remember. And I listened to employment recruiters and what they say, and I listened to other technical managers. The key here is other technical managers, not HR managers, or people looking to hire for sales, or people looking for, they're looking for different soft skills. We're in technical fields, we're not in business development typically. In addition, I referenced my own experience, and this probably factored more heavily into my decision-making than anything else. All right, so here's my list. The Fantastic Five. I want you to all know why I'm calling them this. Fantastic, and remember this word. It means to be extraordinarily good. So these are the soft skills that will help you be extraordinarily good, to shine and to achieve. So these are communication, teamwork, critical and analytical thinking, interpersonal skills, and work ethic. So I'll go through each of these in detail. It's my hope that you will work on these long after this conference. I do want you to remember these, so I've provided you with a mnemonic. And if you can't remember communication, teamwork, critical and analytical thinking, interpersonal skills, and work ethic, these are word association. And so you see the turkeys and the glass of whiskey. So it's cold turkey, chewed ice whiskey. All right, where cold is communication, team is turkeys, critical thinking is chewing on it, iced is what you don't want to have happen with your interpersonal skills. And whiskey is the opposite of work ethic, right? So cold turkeys, chewed ice whiskey, or you can come up with your own. All right, so let's talk communication. This soft skill is usually at the top The only reference I could find claimed the source was a university study from Michael Solomon, who's a PhD in psychologist, who's the chairman of the marketing department, Graduate School of Business at NYU. And his response was that this is an urban myth attributed to him, and he's asked about it frequently. And he said there's no such study that supports this claim. So, of course, there's a lot of evidence that suggests people quickly make judgment calls about others with only limited information, but there's just no research that quantifies it to be 11, decisions in 7 seconds. So you can not, that's one less thing to worry about. So, but regardless of the exact timeline and the number of decisions, we shouldn't jump to conclusions about people when we first meet them. But one thing that is asked by research is that when an audience does not understand your explanation, particularly a technical explanation, they will find you to be less smart. You lose their respect and you experience a loss of credibility. So let me go over that again. If an audience does not understand your technical explanation, if it's overcomplicated, they find you to be less credible. So too many times I've seen people try to impress with how much technical knowledge they possess. The typical audience is not there to try your PhD thesis. Most messaging should be targeted at an 11th or 12th grade level. It's important to try to make sure that your message is clear and focused and that it's delivered in short chunks. If not, you will not be successful with what you're trying to convey. So if you look at the cartoon, it says, "Dude, why haven't you answered my email?" And Gilbert responds, "Your message was so poorly written that I didn't understand it, and I didn't dare to start a dialogue." And he says, "Well, maybe I should talk with your boss." And then Gilbert says, "Well, maybe you should email him." So I know I feel that way sometimes. So here's a very practical example where words do have meaning. Okay. So can you tell what's wrong with the sign on this post? It's a post where you go and you get water for horses. My husband and I have horses, and this is from a horse camp where we went to visit. And I walked by this sign many, many times, and I didn't really look at the words, but my husband did. He's an engineer. He pointed this out to me. Those are his legs. Consumption and consummation have very different meanings. And I just can't help but think, what type of liability were they trying to protect against? So words do have meaning. So using text messaging and email. Remember, in the office, while in the office or using email in general, it's a more permanent record. So most companies keep email on their servers for more than 2 years. And just keep that in mind. It should be considered a formal communication vehicle. When texting people are engaging in forms of writing using more informal rule structures, and you make your writing sound like a conversation. Likewise, the style of writing often attempts to incorporate use of nonverbal communication, like emojis or emoticons, to accent your texting. So consider the two examples in the box on the screen. One is an example of written correspondence using text, while the other is the roughly equivalent version following a more formal writing guideline of a letter or an email. So think of this. Think about who you're addressing and how you're addressing them, particularly if you're at work. Many times people get in trouble because they're too informal. They send an email too quickly. They don't reread it. So especially if it's a complicated, complex, or heated subject, so be careful about that. So a long time ago, when I was starting out in my 20s, someone described to me the varied methods of communication and their levels of effectiveness. So I don't want to date myself, but I will. At the time, these included faxes as one of the methods of communication. We used to fax each other things. So it's something I never forgot because at the time I really thought that calling someone on the phone or sending an email they were just as effective, right? They were equivalent. But after hearing this person and putting what they told me to the test, I never call someone if I can go speak to them in person about something that's important. So face-to-face is the best way, or if you can get them on a video conference, now that we have COVID, that's the best way. It's always best to talk in person. So another item I want to discuss is when you are interacting with someone, it's very important to pay attention to how you facilitate and enable joint understanding. So the environment I work in is full of people that are solution-oriented. We're all looking for the answer, and we're looking to get to done, right? So it means, myself included, we all tend to interrupt, jump to conclusions, finish each other's sentences, change the subject, and fail to ask questions and provide feedback when we should. And it's just the nature of my very fast-paced, dynamic environment. This is something I know that I personally have to work on in order to become a better communicator. Being a better listener is part of the answer to the communication equation. So be aware that listening is part of communication. All right, so my second of the Fantastic Five is teamwork. I have defined teamwork as the skill that allows you to operate well in a group setting in the workplace to quickly and effectively accomplish tasks. All right, sounds easy. Well, you'd be surprised at how many new hires can't function in a teaming environment, and this is critical in product development. If people cannot team, they do not last, no matter their technical skill set. Some of the sub-skills that I've identified as critically important are listed on the left of this slide. So you have to be able to accept feedback. You have to be able to collaborate and cooperate. You have to be able to deal with conflict management, and that means if there's a disagreement on the team, you have to be able to, go ahead and get along. Customer service support, don't argue with the customer. Have negotiation and mediation skills, interpersonal skills, have some self-awareness, have some social skills. I always think of Waterboy. I don't know if you've seen that movie. And his mother telling him he lacks social skills, and then some team building. All right. So when I talk about teamwork and how people might fit in, they're often confused. Individuals know about the role of the team leader. Often this is the role they have pictured in their mind. It's not the role, and it's not often the role they want, or they do want. So I wanted to put up this slide and just talk about some of the other team roles, and these are just a few, and you can read through them. Depending on the project, there might be others. These are generic. I've genericized these. But the important thing to remember is that a team is organic, and each person has a place, and each person needs to find their best fit. And it's important to remember project teams are temporary. You may not think that your team role for the year or the time is ideal, but you have to make it your best fit and leverage this role into a better future role. That's what happens. That is what teamwork means. Working within the team to find where you can best support. So I'm going to mention verbal communication again, this time specifically with the focus on the teaming environment. So the first thing I want to mention is about speaking in front of a group, and this takes practice. So one thing I'd like to say is there's a difference between being scared and nervous. So it's natural, it's natural to be nervous. Most people, including me, get a case of the nerves before getting in front of a group, and especially if it's a technical presentation, lots of complexity, maybe a meeting or a larger group. But just remember, people are people. Just be prepared. You need to practice and get over being scared. Being scared is what is prohibitive and will prevent you from being a great speaker. With any presentation, it's important to think about your overall approach, the entirety of your presentation, do enough research, the better prepared you are, the more comfortable you will be with your audience. And it always helps to use humor to get a point across. This makes you more comfortable, and also it makes your audience connect as well. Especially if it's really complex subject, humor will help keep people awake. Also try to use examples to help the audience understand the points you're trying to convey. Verbally communicating with teams is usually about how to convey getting to done. And what do I mean by this? So here's an example. On a recent effort, I met with some of my staff to discuss the development of a technical presentation to senior leadership. So they all knew the target presentation date and the topic, but during the meeting I had to further describe what done looked like. This entailed describing the walk-up review schedule, the details of the presentation content, book boss ownership, and other details. It was important for me during this meeting to ask questions to ensure that everyone understood, to paraphrase what I thought I heard, and to encourage everyone to present, what they thought they heard, to provide input and to ensure that we were not missing something. So it's always critical that you listen, share, and get feedback from everyone. With clients, verbal communication is probably the single most important tool you have. It's important to focus on their needs, to ask for clarification, ask open-ended questions. Too many times I've seen vendor-customer sessions where the clients were told what they needed, and the clients were not heard. Their requirements were not heard. The ultimate result from these relationships were not optimal, and even though you may be enthusiastic about your capabilities and your products, you must listen to your clients. So as one of the Fantastic Five, it's important that you are able to demonstrate teamwork as one of your core capabilities. You can build this skill by creating your own project or finding opportunities to work within a group or team. If you see these opportunities at work, do not avoid them. Join them. Exercise that muscle. IEEE volunteer opportunities provide a natural, safe space to grow your teamwork soft skill. I know that as an IEEE volunteer, that's how I developed a lot of my teamwork skills. When working in a team, don't worry about who gets the credit. Be part of the team. Do your part, pitch in and contribute, and the credit will come. So remember, you're part of a whole. Work with all the group members, contribute and share ideas and opinions. Take responsibility for something and see it through to delivery. And if you provide feedback, ensure it's done in a constructive and positive manner. So at the bottom of this slide, I love Brene Brown. She writes some great books. I highly recommend her books. A leader is someone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes and has the courage to develop that potential. That's a great quote. All right, so I just wanted to show this slide. 2 kids demonstrating teamwork. It demonstrates very simply what I talked about, both contributing toward a common goal, don't care who gets the credit. It's a good visual that reminds us that sometimes the work may not be glamorous, but the end result is often worth the effort. They both get to play the video game. All right, so studies describe the average individual making 35,000 conscious decisions a day. So the soft skill that helps you improve this daily decision-making process is critical and analytical thinking. This skill helps you to think creatively and helps to keep you from becoming fixed and narrow. I know some people that are fixed and narrow, and I think all of us do. This skill is very important in fast-paced, technically challenging, and constantly changing environments. So according to the World Economic Forum, critical thinking and complex problem solving are the 2 top in-demand skills that employers are looking for. Critical and analytical thinking is deciding what is true and what you should do. So the key sub-skills I associate with this soft skill are critical observation, logical thinking, problem solving, and open-mindedness. And there are some others. All right, so this is a pretty crazy chart, but I wanted to highlight some things. So analytical thinking is the mental process of breaking down complex information or comprehensive data into fundamental parts or basic principles. And critical thinking is the mental process of carefully evaluating the information and determining how to interpret it in order to make a sound judgment. You might start with a claim, a statement, an issue, a problem, or a task. And the goal is to perform an objective analysis resulting in some type of judgment disposition. And the goal is to not get stuck in the tar pit of misunderstanding, or, just go off track. So I thought this was a pretty good slide. All right, so the key to developing a critical thinking soft skill, as with other soft skills, is problem-solving practice. There's some key to critical thinking success that I'd like to mention, and these include resiliency. I often see people or teams rushing to done or rush to solutions, and it's important to step back and question, are you really at the right solution? Another critical thinking killer goes back to communication. And I'm sure you've seen this as well. Someone gets committed to an idea or solution, and they don't like an idea, or they don't like an idea or solution, and all forward progress towards a solution stops. There are a number of great resources available. I've highlighted a couple. The Critical Thinking Skills Workbook by Stephen West and the Analytical Mind by Albert Rutherford are good resources. What is key is to practicing your critical skills development. And it really means having the ability to step back and remain objective, to be able to listen to all input, to remain neutral, and to persevere, right? So we all know that I think you can step back and picture people in your mind you know are great leaders, and that's what they do. They remain objective, and that's a good quality to have. So the next fantastic soft skill that I'd like to introduce is interpersonal skills. And I'd like to quote Stephen Covey, who stated that you cannot continuously improve interdependent systems and processes until you progressively perfect interdependent interpersonal relationships. According to the Myers-Briggs Personality Inventory, I don't know if you're familiar with Myers-Briggs, but it's basically a personality test. Tells you how introverted or extroverted you are. Most programmers and engineers prefer to focus on their inner worlds or are introverts. According to a study published by Braumeister and Leary, we all need connection and engagement with others to thrive. The need to belong and interpersonal connection is recognized as being fundamental to motivation and productivity, whether we like it or not. Positive face-to-face interactions where we receive empathy and connection with one another is highly correlated with human satisfaction and creativity. Interpersonal soft skills are important because they help us develop and foster strong working relationships with each other and with clients. They contribute to increasing team and organizational productivity and help to create an overall more positive work environment. Good interpersonal skills are particularly important when working in fast-paced or constantly changing work environments. That would be most technical environments. So as with other soft skills, you can practice your interpersonal skills. These soft skills are something you can work on each day as you interact with others at work. Some basic things to think about are how do you engage with others? Do you pay attention and actively listen? Do you look at people when they are talking to you? Do you let people finish their sentences? Do you ask them questions? These are ways to show you are interested and are engaged. It's very simple. Think about your voice, the tone and cadence. Do you speak too softly? Do you speak too quickly? Too abruptly? Also, think about your body language, particularly in meetings. I can tell you lots of meetings I've been in where people are either slouched back in their chairs, they have their cell phones in the meetings, leave your cell phone out of the meeting, those types of things. So just stay engaged. Being able to read body language helps us to know how people feel and what they mean. and to understand how people might perceive our own nonverbal signals and how to understand ourselves better. So I have a friend at work who used to be a police interrogator in a past professional life, and I asked him for some insight to some classic body language, what the tells might be. And it was interesting as we were on a video teleconference and we were on mute on our side while we were having this side conversation. Two of these people on the other side were playing with their ties and then crossing their hands. They did it at the same time, and I said, "What are they doing? Does that mean anything?" And playing with your tie is a self-soothing gesture. When men are uncomfortable with the topic being discussed, you often see them adjust their ties. And then crossing your hands on the table was a defensive gesture. I mean, it just happened all at the same time. So there's things you can find on the internet, and sometimes it's good to understand body language. I'm not sure. This all happened during a very controversial part of this conversation that was going on. It was very interesting to observe. So, it can only help you if you understand body language. So you can research some of that. But what I say is believe in yourself is another thing that affects interpersonal soft skills. If you're insecure, it will affect how you interact with others. If there's an area where you need additional technical training, address it. Ask your management to help you get some additional training or take some courses in school after hours. Another item is don't get involved with office drama. Stay neutral and out of the fray. Don't complain and remain positive. If you're unhappy, address your specific issues with a manager and don't get involved in office gossip. Try to mentor and guide others where appropriate and be as inclusive as possible. Network with others in the company that are outside your immediate work group. Attend industry events and leverage local IEEE activities. Okay, the fifth soft skill on the list is work ethic. There are many definitions of work ethic, but many of these are one-dimensional. I didn't like them. The definitions don't capture the associated attitudes, behaviors, responsibilities, communication. So I have one here. I took a stab at it. And work ethic is how you feel about your job, how you do your job, as well as the level of respect you show your coworkers and others at your job. So from this definition, you can see how the key characteristics that you should have that I've listed here directly relate. So why is it important to have a good and strong work ethic? Ultimately, it will show the strength of your character, and it presents you as an all-around positive person. In the workplace, this will be to your advantage. If you're looked at favorably by your coworkers and your superiors, you'll have better chances of advancing your career. So I've listed a few key items to start with to practice a good work ethic. Be on time for all appointments and meetings. Arrive a bit early if possible. Pay attention to how you're dressing. Have you read the office dress code? Are you in compliance? Are you dressing for the job you want and maybe not the job you have? Put your phone away while at work. Keep it on silent. Do your best, but stay balanced. Remember to take care of yourself. You're being paid for a work week, 40 hours a week. If your company is expecting too many uncompensated overtime hours, if they have unrealistic expectations, you may need to dust off your resume. All right, so I presented what I view as the top 5 soft skills. To recap, cold turkeys, chewed ice whiskey, communication, teamwork, critical thinking, interpersonal skills, and work ethic. But having all the skills won't get you the job you want unless you're able to translate these to your resume. So when developing your resume, it's important to think balance. Balance your soft and hard skills. They should complement each other so that you become an employee that is desired. For example, I would look for an engineer who's both highly technically competent while being able to understand the business and acquisition side of things, as well as possess the ability to communicate with clients. So here's an example of a technique for translating your skills into a resume format. It's called the STAR method. I will warn you, and you can research this. There's information on the web available about STAR. I'll warn you that this method will require several iterations, and I recommend you enlist someone to help you review your content as you iterate through the revisions, because one of the hardest things to do is to self-edit. STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. You break each major career activity into the original problem, the goal, the step you took, and the final outcome. So from the resume, and these are some things from my resume. I think this is from my resume. You'll see the situation or problem, and that was provided technical leadership for the United States Department of Army Research Directorate, Software Engineering Directorate, America's Army Program. The task or goal was the first large-scale use of game technology by the U.S. government as a platform for strategic communication, and the first use of game technology in support of U.S. Army recruiting, employing realistic models in situations. The action or step I took to reach the goal was that under my technical leadership and production execution, the program delivered its first pilot versions of the game, creating a user base of over 8 million players, and was ranked in the top 10 first-person shooter games played online. The result or final outcome was the success of America's Army pushed the boundaries of commercial game realism and combat the depiction with its incorporation of real-world-based models and simulations. These gaming models and simulations were groundbreaking and have had long-lasting impact on military training. These have been leveraged to support military training applications with increasing realism and accuracy with which our military are trained. So when you're putting your resume together, you also have to think specifically about highlighting the specific soft skills I discussed today. So here's some other examples. For communication, you can list some things like a speaking engagement, or for teamwork, things that you have led. So those are good things to show as well. So in conclusion, before I start taking questions, it's really important that you take what I do your own research. Soft skills are critically important. It's important that you put them on your resume, incorporate them, balance your hard skills. They're hard to develop. They take you have to work on them over time. One of the most valuable things I found from my IEEE volunteer experience is that the work I've done as a volunteer in IEEE has really helped me improve my communication skills, my management leadership skills, and that's probably one of the most valuable give backs, I guess you could say, that IEEE has provided me. So I would recommend that if that you have a volunteer portal that was launched last year, volunteer.ieee.org, that you can go on the web and look for opportunities to get engaged and maybe build and strengthen some of your leadership skills. Anyway, hopefully we have time for questions. So I'll go to the last slide. If you have any questions about any of the content today, you can email me at skland@ieee.org. I'm also on Instagram, Susan Kathy Land, and on Twitter at skland1. So anyway, I will, if Michelle is there or Scott.
Yes. Hi, Kathy. I'm here. We do have some questions. Let's see. The first one is, would you please comment on the use of jargon and the abbreviated terms?
The use of jargon in what?
The use of jargon and abbreviated terms. Michael's asking this question.
Jargon and abbreviated terms is related to which slide? Whoever asked that question.
Michael asked that question, so hopefully he'll respond to that, and we can come back to that one.
Okay.
Let's see. Here's one by Peter. He says that I have Asperger. Need to read small talks. Any tips?
Repeat that again. It's hard to hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's by Peter. He says that I have Asperger's. Need to read small talks. Any tips?
I need to read small talks and tips.
Yes. I guess he wants to look into small talks. Is there? Yeah. If you have any tips.
Yeah. So the best way. So yeah, that's tough. I have a really great friend who has Asperger's. So my advice. I don't know if you're working on a small team or if there's a local Toastmasters group in your area that you might want to look and see how big it is, and you could join that. Or if you're an IEEE member, you can look and join one of the councils or smaller societies or get involved there. A lot of the committee meetings or the working group meetings are very small. And so it's good just to engage. You don't have to give a talk at first. You can just sitting in those committee meetings gives you the opportunity to speak, like in front of a group. At first you might just second a motion, right? But it gives you an opportunity to engage in front of a group, and that helps, right? It sort of gets you out of your comfort zone. You can, a lot of these conferences with IEEE, when you go, people think you're going to go and be presenting in front of 200 people, but a lot of these, when you go present, they're smaller, and you may only have, 10 people in the audience because the conferences are so broken up and the agendas are so full. So that might be a good way is to prepare something, do some research on the conference, contact the organizers and see typically how many people would be in your conference session. So there's lots of different ways to sort of tackle that, but it really varies. Some of the conferences do have big numbers, but many of these, especially if you're doing a technical talk, don't have tons of people in the audience.
Okay, great. Here's another question by Brian. I find in my work that one of the most valuable skills is to translate from computer to human and back, along with helping groups of people with overlapping by different vocabularies to understand one another. How important have you found these to be in your experience?
Extremely. That's why I kept harping on communication. I agree with you completely. So one of the biggest problems that we have is people you're a very valuable asset, because I spend a big part of my day as I'm a program manager. I have multiple teams, and we have to, my programs have to present to senior leadership. I work for missile defense, and typically we have 5 slides or less, right? So if you can't say it in 5 slides, that we get maybe 30 minutes on some senior leader's calendar. But if you can't say it in 5 slides or less, and you can't translate the technical into something these senior leaders can understand, I mean, they're very sharp. Don't get me wrong, they're all engineers. But, they may not be as familiar with the technical content as we are. And you have to translate all the nuances. But that's key. And especially if it's not my domain field, that I've worked other programs. I worked in commercial systems for years, talking to clients who are not technical. So you have to be able to do that translation. Like I said, 12th grade level, 11th grade level, you have to be able to translate it in common sense terms so people who are non-technical can understand. That is incredibly valuable. Critical.
Great. Here's another question from Luke. Let's see. Might you be aware of any efforts within academia to build this into curricula? Related, let's see. Is there any perception of an erosion in the skills over the past couple of decades, and thus why your message is so important?
So I don't know of any efforts to build it into curricula, and they should. I think that there should be, it should be at least part of some capstone or something where, you have to present. Or I know there's teamwork, but I don't think an evaluation of how people performed as part of the team is part of it. But it could be easily I'm going to go back to, let's see, my slide. Where is it? Where I had the 5 soft skills. I'll put those up there. The 5. I'm trying to find my slide. Sorry. It's pushing. I'm trying to get it. Okay. So to me, you could very easily build some kind of capstone project or something for a course where a group is working on the technical effort, but they're also you're also emphasizing these soft skills. So, and I have noticed an erosion, especially as we tend to, I don't know if it's with the advent of all of this social networking, but definitely a breakdown in communication and writing skills. So if you have a really good writing skills and you can team, you're extremely valuable if you're smart technically.
Here's another question. Can the presenter suggest resources for navigating international cultural contexts in presenting and communication? Global meetings can be very commonplace.
Repeat the first part of that. Repeat that again.
The person's asking, can the presenter suggest resources for navigating international and cultural contexts in a presentation and communication?
I don't know of one resource, and it's not just international navigation. We have to also be sensitive to people with disabilities and gender and those types of inclusivity, right? So there's lots of barriers when we're trying to communicate. I know that there are some IEEE conferences. I spoke to a guy the other day who is sort of breaking barriers down across the board and doing some pretty amazing things. Color blindness, he was telling me all the things they're doing in their conferences that are it's kind of incredible. All of the things I just described. I would just advise you to do some research, but that's definitely an area that I don't know of a resource, and there may be. I find something new about IEEE every day. So there may be a resource to support. I know that, there's help with language translation and that kind of stuff, but as far as being prepared up front, I don't know. I'm sorry, I can't point you to a resource there. That's a great question.
Okay. Going back to the first question by Michael, would you please comment on the jargon and abbreviation? He responded and he said people tend, I guess what he's trying to say is that people tend to use jargon and abbreviated terms in many meetings with the intent of accelerating the communication. Would that be the effective practice you'd recommend?
No. And I'll tell you a story. Okay. So as a young volunteer, I started in IEEE. Well, I was a volunteer, but not a member for 3 years. And I was working in standards. Well, I got sort of challenged to go to present at a standards conference. And this was when I was scared. I wasn't nervous. So I went to this standards conference with the only goal of not getting booed off the stage. I was 28, I think. And so I made it. I didn't get booed off the stage. And then they asked me to volunteer for their conference, and I was the publicity chair. And then I got asked to participate in the Software Engineering Standards Working Group. So I go to this working group, and it's all these guys are, the average age was like, I don't know, 55 plus, and I'm like 30. And they were great. They were wonderful. But when they started the meeting, they started talking in jargon, like, the standards all have a number. So it was like 1490, 810, and, whatever. Y'all can recognize all the standard numbers. And I didn't know what was going on. I didn't understand. I hadn't read all the standards. I didn't know any of the standards except for the one I've been working on. So I didn't, what I did is I went home. I read all the standards, created a matrix, identified all the people that were involved, blah, blah, blah. In the next meeting, I went back and I opened up my computer. I didn't tell them I created this matrix. And so when they started talking, they started making mistakes because they were going by memory. And so I said, well, I think what you really mean is this, or, this person's really the chair of this working group, and the par is due at this time. And they thought I was like the standards genius when I had just really done my homework. My point here is that, yeah, you're going to go into meetings, and people are going to be talking in jargon. And I work for Missile Defense, and we're the kings and queens of acronyms, and we overload acronyms. And that's the problem, is that somebody might say PDR, and somebody will think, well, that's preliminary design review or persistent discrimination radar. Well, which is it? And it causes confusion. So you have to be careful about your acronyms. If you have somebody that's new to the group, have the acronyms defined in a document and provide them to them and welcome them to the group so they're not lost. And that's my advice. It's going to happen. It's just a natural part of who we are. We all have our own secret codes, but make sure you have a decoder for the new guy.
Great. Here's another question. How to improve conflict management skills?
Repeat it again.
How to improve conflict management skills?
Okay, conflict. So that's a hard thing, because we all, if you're involved in a conflict, the first step is to get somebody else to be the mediator. Because when we all think conflict management, we all think, usually we're involved, and there's a hesitancy to get somebody else involved. But the best process is to, invite the person you're in conflict with and get a mediator and discuss it out, hash it out in a neutral situation. Get a neutral mediator. But if you're the manager and there's a conflict, you have to be neutral. You can't, and if you can't be, then find somebody else to be involved. Get HR involved, that kind of thing. I hope that is how I answered that. But conflict management, don't avoid it. The people tend to be, especially introverts, tend to be conflict avoiders. And the worst thing you can do is avoid a bad situation. It only gets worse. Just stress it.
Great. Here's another question, Kathy. What can you do when a manager is shouting at you?
That's terrible. And I know that there's a really great book. It's called The Bully at Work. And I recommend that everybody read it. It's amazing. And it tells you about behavior that's totally unacceptable for many years. So I have another story. So I was a manager at Northrop Grumman, and there was a manager who, I was a section manager, and there was another section manager. And I had like 25 employees, and I was also the tech director for the unit. And so I knew the vice president at corporate well, and so the department head was gone, and the person above him was gone. They were all at some corporate meeting. But the vice president of the sector was there. And the sector is like, 120,000 people. So this woman comes into my office, African-American woman, and she closed the door and she said, somebody is bullying me. This is what's been going on. And it was a horrific story. And I said, and it was her manager, a woman. And I said, well, if we report this, there's a risk, because this woman had a history of systemic bullying, was known for this, but she was a producer within this part of the company. I said, well, I'm willing to report it. I can report it out to the VP because everybody's out of town. You don't have to go through the people that have not been dealing with her behavior. And I trust this VP. I know him. He's honest and trustworthy. But, there's a risk that, this may not work and that you and I will both suffer the repercussions, but I'm willing to go there with you. And she said, okay. So we called him up and we reported it. And he said, well, yeah, this is not right. What do you think we should do? And I explained that this woman had a history of this type of behavior and that it had not been dealt with. And I said, well, what I recommend is that you send an HR team down here and interview everybody off-site. Don't announce you're coming. Conduct interviews of every person that works in this office that's worked here more than 3 years. And they did. They were down in like 2 days and conducted the interviews. And they fired her and 2 other of her cronies 2 days before Thanksgiving. I mean, it all happened within, 2 weeks. And they demoted the department head and sanctioned the guy above him because what they discovered was so egregious. It was, not only had they been doing stuff to this woman, but other people. So, and it just turned around the whole department. It was cathartic. But my point is that there is, and I bought that book, The Bully at Work, during this time, and it reinforced that certain behaviors are unacceptable. And it's poison and toxic to the corporate culture. And one of the behaviors is screaming at people. And if you are working for somebody that's screaming at you, then my advice is that you need to find another job. If your HR department, you can go talk to HR, but typically in an organization that tolerates that kind of behavior, HR is not going to help you. And I hate to say that, but that's usually what happens. So you can go try to talk to HR, but my advice is to go get your resume out. And if that's not possible, I don't know what to tell you, but, go to HR. They're supposed to keep it confidential, but HR in companies is there to work for the manager, not the employee.
Great. We have one more time for one more question. Lee, he's asking, I believe childhood sports, music, and other group activities improve the skills you described. Do you agree?
Yes, I do. Yeah, any kind of group activity will improve your skill set. Any kind of teamwork activity, any team activity will improve interpersonal skills. Anything you have to commit to will improve work ethic. Music will certainly improve critical and analytical thinking. So yes, and communication, all that. Yes, I agree.
Great. Thank you so much, Kathy, for this informative presentation, and thank you everyone for attending. I wanted to mention that our next Distinguished Lecture webinar series will be held on the 15th January at 2 p.m. Eastern on an operational recovery framework for cyber reliance, presented by Cyril Anuwabigo, Director, Artificial Intelligence, Blockchain, and Cybersecurity. Our Build Your Career webinar series is currently in the planning phases. We hope to have a schedule ready before end of January 2021. Registrations for upcoming events are now open. We will be sending you a link of these future events along with the slides and recordings of this webinar. Thank you again, everyone, and have a great, a wonderful, safe day. Thank you.